You found out she chose someone else. Maybe she told you directly, maybe you saw it on social media, maybe a mutual friend let it slip. But either way, that moment hit you like a wall. Your chest got tight, your mind started racing, and somewhere in the back of your head, a voice started asking the same question on repeat. What did I do wrong? Here's the thing. That question is the first trap. And most guys walk straight into it without even realizing it. Welcome to PsyCraft Daily. We break down the psychology behind relationships, attraction, and self-mastery, so you can stop guessing and start understanding what's actually happening. Now, let's get into this. The story nobody tells you. Let me paint you a picture. David and Sophia had been close for almost 8 months. They texted every single day. They hung out regularly. He made her laugh. He was there when she needed someone. He genuinely cared about her. And then, one afternoon, she posted a photo, arms around another guy, caption with a little heart emoji. Just like that. David's immediate response? He replayed every conversation they ever had. He started looking for the exact moment he said the wrong thing, made the wrong move, came across too strong, or maybe not strong enough. He convinced himself that if he could just find the mistake, he could fix it. He could go back to her, explain himself, and somehow reverse what happened. He spent 3 weeks doing that. 3 weeks of mental forensics on a situation that was already over. Sound familiar? Here's what most people miss. The rejection didn't happen because of one mistake. It happened because of a pattern that was already in motion long before she made that choice. And understanding that pattern is the difference between getting stuck for months versus moving forward with actual clarity. What her choice actually reveals. Most guys take a woman choosing someone else as a verdict on their worth. Like a judge just slammed down a gavel and declared, them officially not good enough. That's not what's happening. Attraction isn't a merit system. It's not a test where the most objectively qualified man wins. What she chose was a feeling, and feelings don't follow logic. They follow chemistry, timing, tension, and a dozen invisible factors that had nothing to do with whether you're a good person or not. Think about this. You've probably met someone before who checked every box on paper, but you just weren't drawn to them. It wasn't their fault. It wasn't your fault. The feeling just wasn't there. That's the same mechanism working against you right now. But here's where it gets interesting. A lot of men make the mistake of assuming the other guy won because he was better, taller, more successful, funnier, and sometimes that's partially true. But more often the other guy just triggered a different emotional response. He created uncertainty where you created comfort. He pulled back where you leaned forward. He held tension where you released it. That's not a character flaw on your part. It's a dynamic that most guys were never taught to understand. So, what do? First, you stop treating her choice as a referendum on your value as a man. You separate your identity from the outcome. Because if you let this moment define how you see yourself, every decision you make going forward is going to be filtered through insecurity. And that will affect every other relationship you build from here. The psychological trap that keeps you stuck. Let's talk about what's actually happening in your brain right now, because this is something nobody explains clearly enough. When you experience rejection from someone you were emotionally invested in, your brain processes it almost identically to physical pain. This isn't poetic language. There's actual neurological overlap. The same regions that activate when you stub your toe activate when you lose a social bond, which means the instinct to obsess over it isn't weakness, it's biology. Your mind is trying to problem solve its way out of pain. The issue is that this kind of pain can't be thought away. You can analyze the situation from every angle, replay every text message, ask every friend for their opinion, and the pain doesn't shrink. In a lot of cases, it gets bigger because you're feeding it your attention every single day. Let me show you how this actually works. When you keep revisiting the situation, your brain keeps that emotional wound open. It's like checking a cut every 5 minutes to see if it healed. You're actually slowing the process. The men who recover fastest from rejection aren't the ones who figured out exactly what went wrong. They're the ones who redirected their mental energy towards something that demanded their full presence. There's a guy, let's call him Ray. Ray got left for someone else by a woman he thought was the one. His first instinct was to reach out, explain how he felt, maybe win her back. He didn't. Instead, he started training for a half marathon. Not because it was a magic cure, but because running 5 miles requires you to be completely present. You can't analyze a text conversation from 2 months ago when your lungs are burning and your legs are screaming. 6 months later, Ray was in the best shape of his life. He'd built something, and when he looked back at that situation, it had shrunk. Not because time healed it automatically, but because he filled that time with forward motion. So, what do? You identify one physical or skill-based pursuit that forces full mental presence, and you commit to it immediately. Not next week, now. The redirected energy isn't avoidance, it's recovery. Almost every guy in this situation eventually faces the same decision. Do you reach out to her or not? And I'm going to give you an honest answer instead of a blanket rule. Most advice you'll find online tells you one of two things. Either fight for her or cut her off. Completely. Both of those can be wrong depending on the context. Let's break it down. If she made her choice clearly, communicated it to you, and moved forward, reaching out with emotional appeals doesn't create attraction. It signals that you haven't accepted the situation. And here's the psychological reality. People are drawn to those who don't need them. The moment you start chasing after a decision she's already made, you confirm a dynamic that works against you. Think about this. If you reach out and she responds with sympathy, that's not the response you actually want. Sympathy and attraction are completely different emotional states. She might feel bad for you. She might even be kind about it. But she's not suddenly going to reverse a choice she made with her heart because you made a compelling argument with words. Now, here's the nuance. There are situations where briefly acknowledging the situation with composure, not to plead, but simply to close the chapter, cleanly, can preserve your dignity and leave things on healthy terms. A short, calm message that doesn't beg, doesn't blame, and doesn't try to reopen the decision. Something that communicates you heard her, you respect her choice, and you're moving forward. That's not weakness, that's maturity. But that only works if you can genuinely send it and then actually go silent. No follow-up, no checking to see if she responded, no waiting for her to change her mind. So, what do? Ask yourself honestly, am I reaching out because it serves my growth and closure, or am I reaching out because, I'm hoping it changes the outcome? If it's the second one, don't send it. Sit with the discomfort instead. Discomfort that you sit with actually builds something. Discomfort that you try to talk your way out of just keeps cycling. What the other guy actually did. Let's have a real conversation about the man she chose instead. You might have built him up in your head already. You might be imagining he's more confident, more attractive, more everything. And here's the honest truth. Maybe he is in some ways. But obsessing over his qualities is one of the most destructive things you can do to yourself right now. Here's what I want you to consider instead. Whatever this other guy has or does, the more useful question is, what was the dynamic between them, and what does that reveal about what she responds to? This isn't about mimicking someone else. It's about understanding attraction mechanics so you can show up more fully as yourself in future situations. The most common pattern I see is this. Men who consistently end up in the friend zone or who lose women to other guys tend to be incredibly good at being available. And availability, when it's unconditional, does something counterintuitive. It removes tension, it signals that you're already secured, and human psychology, as irrational as it sounds, is wired to be more drawn to things that feel slightly uncertain. That doesn't mean you should be cold or play games. It means you should have a full life that doesn't orbit around one person's attention. It means your time should have genuine value, not artificial scarcity. Let that sink in. The version of you that has real passions, real goals, real direction, that version is naturally more attractive than the version that's structuring his availability around someone else's schedule. Not because you're less attentive, but because you're more complete. Rebuilding without resentment. Here's the fork in the road that determines everything about where you end up 6 months from now. One path is resentment. You start to frame women as the problem. You collect evidence that people are selfish and loyalty is dead and vulnerability is weakness. This path feels logical when you're in pain. It even feels protective. But what it actually does is close you off from the exact experiences you want most. The other path is reconstruction, and reconstruction doesn't mean pretending the rejection didn't hurt. It means using it as diagnostic information. James went through something similar, lost a woman he genuinely loved to a coworker she'd been spending time with. His first 6 months afterward were rough, but he made one decision that changed his trajectory. He started asking better questions, not, why wasn't I enough? But, what do I want my life to look like in 2 years, and what does the version of me who has that look like today? That shift, from victim framing to builder framing, is where everything changes. The version of you that she eventually regrets letting go of isn't the one who spent months waiting, stewing, or obsessing. It's the one who took that energy and built something real, not to win her back, not to prove a point to anyone, but because you decided your own life was worth investing in. Here's the thing. That kind of growth has a magnetic quality to it. People feel it. Future partners feel it. You feel it. And it becomes a foundation that no rejection can actually shake because it's not built on someone else's validation. So, what do? Write it down, not just think it. 3 areas of your life you've been neglecting because your emotional bandwidth was absorbed by this situation. Your fitness, your career, your friendships, a skill you abandoned, a goal you put on hold. Then pick one to attack first with everything you've got. The long game. Nobody plays. Most men think about rejection as an ending. The mature move is to understand it as information. Every time a situation like this doesn't work out, you get a cleaner picture of what you actually want, what kind of dynamic you're drawn to, what patterns in your own behavior have been quietly working against you. This is only useful if you're willing to look at it honestly. Ask yourself, not to punish yourself, but genuinely, were you showing up fully in that situation? Were you being direct about your interest? Or were you hovering in ambiguity, hoping she'd read between the lines? Were you building real emotional tension? Or were you so eager to be liked that you smoothed over every moment that could have created genuine connection? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're the actual work. Because the man who comes out of rejection stronger isn't the one who changes himself to become what someone else wanted. He's the one who gets clearer on who he already is, yet strips away the habits that were dimming that, and walks into the next chapter without the weight of someone else's choice defining his self-image. The world is full of men walking around carrying the quiet belief that they weren't chosen because something was fundamentally wrong with them. And that belief bleeds into everything: how they carry themselves, how they approach new women, how they communicate, how they handle conflict. You don't have to be one of those men. She made her choice. You can't undo that, but what you do with the next 90 days is entirely yours. The men who look back at moments like this as turning points, they're not the ones who found the perfect comeback, or won her back through some grand gesture, or proved something to the world. They're the ones who decided quietly, in a moment nobody else witnessed, that they were going to become someone they were actually proud of. Not for her, not for the next woman, for themselves. That decision, that specific, private, unglamorous decision, is where the real story starts. You're still in the opening chapter. Write it well. If this connected with something you're going through, hit subscribe. We go deep on this stuff every week.